It's the whole mood. You missed ships that pass in the night. Speaking of ships that pass in the night, friends, we are coming to you from the Limelight in the heart of pulsating, vibrant, beautiful, romantic, poetic Greenwich Village. And here he is, the greatest Jew's harp player in the history of Western man. Your friend and mine, Gene Shepard. Politics! Holy smoke! Pause! Boo-boo! All right, Eddie! Eddie! Boy, in about 5 minutes, the medical officer's going to be here for an inspection. It's going to be GI helmets, raincoats, shoes, and nothing else. All right? By the way, how many of you have noticed? Well, in case you've wondered what this fantastic symbol is up here, this is our symbolic listener. And I can only say, if the shoe fits, either that, or you have your choice here. This is one of them multiple choice things. You have your choice. This is also a symbolic mother figure. In fact, we had a kid come down here to the Limelight a couple of weeks ago. He walked in, took one look, and says, "How did she know that I was coming out here?" Turns around. Oh, my. Yes, that's right. This is a special day. I forgot. In just 2 days, friends, it's going to be Valentine's Day. You nervous? Well, now, there's something to be said about Valentine's Day. You know, I read a note in the Wall Street Journal that said America spends over $41 million on love. $41 million on love. You know that inside the love industry, they call it the guilt business? $41 million. Now, that's not just on Valentine. That's on Valentine-shaped things with bad candy in it. That's on all things that have to do with love. And only in a country like America would we spend so much on that abstraction. Love. As a matter of fact, there was a great playwright who once wrote, I think, one of the most interesting lines about America. He says, you know, it's a sad thing that America has the eagle for its national symbol. This is ridiculous. What it should have is the Cocker Spaniel. It says, you know, and it should be a Cocker Spaniel standing up, you know, looking up, big round eyes saying, "Love me, please. Love me." Oh, yeah. Well, that's part of that love industry. And by the way, it's interesting. This is the only Valentine that I got this year. I really feel cheated. It says, "Be my Valentine, or I'll kick you in the ear." Well, it doesn't exactly mean ear. Well, that's I think before I go on the air, before we even get started here, you got to reassure me. I want to hear just one loud bellow out of this crowd. "We love you, Shep." Now let's hear it. 1, 2, 3. You notice it's always the bar. Every time some guy up there. Well, you know, this business of the Valentine, there's a little kid. We stand up on your seat there. There's a little guy here, a genuine kid. I didn't know they still made him. There he is, a genuine kid. And before I went on the air today, he says, "I'm in 2nd grade." I says, "Are you?" He says, "Yes." I said, "So, well, what's happening?" He said, "We're going to have a party Monday, Valentine's." I said, you giving anybody a Valentine? He says, yes, Kathy. And I said, is Kathy giving you one? And there was a long, pregnant pause. He says, she already told me she doesn't like me. So wherever Kathy is tonight, we have with us the man who is madly in love with you. Let's give him a hand. Already, all the men applaud particularly loudly there. Already, this poor little innocent victim of life's vicissitudes is beginning his long trip. Always looking at chicks that pass on the street. And then you look at the one you're with. Ships that pass in the night. By the way, listen, before I go into this, how many of you men, I don't know whether women have the equivalent, but every man in his head has a kind of image of the total girl. The girl. You know what I mean by the definitive girl, men? Look at, you can see those faces suddenly drifting away. And I can see ladies bending over the table saying, what does he mean? It's nothing. I think he's a nut, some kind of a nut. Oh yeah, we all have this image in our mind of some kind of a definitive, some kind of a, oh, it's not a composite, it's maybe a chick square. And ever since the time we were about 7, we've been searching and seeing her, vaguely, getting into a bus. While you're walking down, the bus goes. You say, wait. I guess if I'd have seen her from the front, it would have been the same. Then 10 minutes later, you see her walking across the street with somebody else. You know what I mean? That's just that little flick in the night. In fact, right here at the Limelight, there are guys in the back of the room that think they've just seen one up here. Well, I remember one time a thing that happened to me that's about to occur to this kid. I am in Miss Sheilds' second grade class. She was my second grade teacher. You know, how many of you can remember your teachers? Every teacher you had all the way on up through 8th grade. You know, I'll bet half this crowd thinks he's a patsy. I planted him. You know, and the other day I'm watching an old movie on television, and this girl, the psychiatrist asked her, he says, what do you remember out of your past? And it was Joanne Woodward in The Three Faces of Eve. And she says, well, I remember Miss Watson in first grade. And he says, now your memory's coming back. And then I remember, and she started to give all the names of her teachers. And I'm sitting there thinking of my teachers when I was in school. And for some reason or other, the one that sticks out the most was Miss Sheilds in second grade. She had this big Brillo pad on her head, you know. Yeah, she had a big fuzzy thing, you know, on the top of her head. She was thin and she was pale, and she had these blue eyes behind rimless glasses. And I always had the feeling she was right on the verge, right on the edge, the knife edge of crying. Well, no wonder, you know, she's looking down at this melange, you know. How do you think a teacher must feel? Year after year, decade after decade, these faces, these hanging slack jaws, looking up at her, these hungry, questing eyes, these angry faces, these pasty little figures. No wonder most teachers get that vaguely, surrealistically kind of look of people who have lived in a Kafka novel. Their world is endless, year after year. Well, Miss Sheilds used to stand up in front of our class, and every holiday we had in second grade was a big issue. And I'd say about a week or maybe even 10 days before Thanksgiving, we would start growing turkeys. Before Halloween, we had a stack of drawings of pumpkins that high, you know. We had pumpkins and witches going out. But the one she really hit the jackpot on was Valentine's Day. And remember, she was Miss Sheilds. I mean, she was really Miss Sheilds, you know. I mean, you know, the kind of lady that was born wearing a girdle. You know, she used to stand up there pale, and she would read to us out of a book called Raggedy Ann and Raggedy Andy and the Camel with the Wrinkled Knees. And I can remember her saying, and Raggedy Andy said to Raggedy Ann, "I love you, Raggedy Ann," and tears would come down out of her eyes. She would be involved in this. Well, as Valentine's Day got closer, she got more and more frenzied. And she'd bring, you remember when they used to give you this lace paper in school, and you had to make Valentines? They give you the red paper, and you had the paste. By the way, how many in this crowd here would like a good pot of paste tonight to eat? Are there any paste eaters in this crowd? There's one right there, you know. Her teeth are all stuck together. I used to, you know, the funny thing about that paste, I used to like it when it got the little crust on the top. I used to nip a little bit the crust, you know. And then once in a while, you'd get a new thing of paste. It came in a little clear jar, you know, and I used to just take my finger around it. Vintage year, you know. Very good. I even tried glue. There were some guys in my class who were ink addicts. You ever know an ink addict? I knew a guy that just used to mainline red ink. I would love to see a doctor taking a blood test on him and the ink comes out, you know. Well, Miss Sheilds would stand up there before Valentine's Day, and she'd say, "We're all going to make Valentines. Now, use your creative imagination. Create." And I always had this great idea of a heart. I wonder how many of you ever made this kind. With a heart, and you'd make a little spring out of a piece of paper. You'd fold it 3 times, and you would glue it to the back of another bigger heart, see, so it would spring out like that. Would sort of hang down droopingly. How significant. And then around it you would paste this little fuzzy, you know, this lace and stuff like that, and you'd write on the bottom of it, "To Esther Jane." Well, there was a chick in my second grade class. She moved away about 2 years after second grade. I'll never forget when she moved. What a fantastic traumatic experience it was. How many of you remember being in love with a girl when you were about in second or first grade? One of the very first girls you really got hung up on. And then she moved. Her old man was transferred to Cleveland. And she was gone out of your life. You'd walk around recess staring, you know, and you always pretend you didn't like girls. You know, I was right in that stage where you showed your love by hitting her in the teeth. You know, that hitting, you know, then you'd hide. You'd see whether you scored on her, you know, or not. You know, it was all that part of that whole thing. And so I remember Dawn Strickland. Oh, boy. When I think of Dawn Strickland now, even now, you notice I'm getting to look like a ball of jello up here. Oh, Dawn. Oh. Dawn Strickland, she wore her hair like a helmet. You know, the kind that was cut like this. and she always wore patent leather shoes that buttoned over the front. And she wore these white socks, and she was fantastically clean. She was the untouchable girl. And Dawn Strickland, see, she was one of the S's. My name is Shepherd. I could only fall in love with people who were very close to me. I had bad astigmatism, see. And, and Dawn Strickland would sit over here, and I'd look at Dawn Strickland, and I'd just keep looking at her. And this continued all the way through 1A, 2B. Now I'm in 2A, see, and my glands are growing and everything, see. And I keep looking at her. And every night I would go home and it's funny when you're a male. I don't know whether chicks do this, but men get into these fantastic, little kids especially, they get into these terrible, depressed states about the chick that you're hung up. You can hardly wait to get to school the next day. And I would walk home and I would see Dawn Strickland's house. It was her house. I mean, her real house, you know. You could see it. I walked past. I wondered about her house. I could imagine her room and her closet. I could just see it, you know. She'd come out and I'd walk past. And then I would walk past again. I'm looking for something now, see. I remember skating past her house and falling down all the time. Wondering if she's looking out, you know. And then every night I would go home and I would sit. I can remember sitting at supper with that sick feeling. My mother'd say, "What's the matter? Don't you like the meatloaf?" "That's your favorite meatloaf with tomato ketchup." I say, "Yeah, it's good, Mom." And I would sit and I would hang despondently over my cocoa malt. Just like guys, when they grow up, hang despondently over their bourbon in bars. And I would look down. I had this little cup, you know. It was one of these plastic cups that they use to euchre kids into drinking their milk. Every time you pick it up, it would play "Farmer in the Town." Da-da-da-da-da. And as you down your cocoa malt, you would see Minnie Mouse in the bottom. Oh, boy. All I got to do is come into this bar one night and find Minnie Mouse in the bottom of my bourbon. And I'm just having this fantastic hang-up on Dawn Strickland. She'd sit there every day, and she's got this look about her, this cool look. And it's now Valentine's Day. I figured this is my chance to let her know just what she needs. And so I'm working on the greatest, you know, my artwork, and I'm sitting there, and I've got the paper out and the fringe and the whole bit, and I'm making little gold things and paper bits, and I got the paste going, and I'm hiding it from her, see, so she doesn't see. Well, it's going to be a surprise. What's not it? I see Dawn Strickland over there working on her Valentine, and I think it's going to be mine. Me and Dawn forever. We are going to walk through life like little orphan Annie and Sandy forever, and I'll go arf. You know, the whole bit. Well, I remember the day that bright and early. I am in second grade. I've got my Valentine. It's done, and it's stuck under the desk. You know, these desks with the little shelf underneath. I got it under there. And we always had our parties late in the afternoon. And all day we'd go through arithmetic, spelling, geography. And at that particular period, we were working on a relief map. How many of you ever worked on a relief map of South America? One of these big ones, you know, and everybody's there with the flour and the water, and I'm making the Andes. I'm making the Andes, you know. And Joss away next to me, he's helping me with the Andes, and he's working down about Lima, maybe. And I'm up here near Ecuador, see. The two of us are working away there. And directly across from us, working on the other coast, is Dawn Strickland. And I keep looking at Dawn, see. And Joss away is joggling up and down against me, you know. The two of them are looking across and saying, And I'm looking over there, and here's South America spread in between us. You can see the Amazon River trickling down towards Esther Jane Albury. She's over there, you know. And Chile is way over here by Al Farkas. Al Farkas, by the way, was our delinquent. I'll never forget the time Farkas absolutely challenged Miss Sheilds. He just got up, broke his pencil in half. That's really big. What a symbolic movement, you know. He goes, pow, like that. Then he stood by his desk. He just wasn't going to do it anymore, all this jazz, you know. This is ridiculous stuff, you know. He was a very early demonstrator. You know? Miss Sheilds says, sit down. He said, sit down. And Farkas slowly sat down. And the whole class, you know, there was that tense moment in the class. Everyone thought, this is it. But it ain't going to happen. He's chickened again. And then he goes up. And Miss Sheilds turns back to the board. That look, you know, that sweeping look. All of us sit there. And you know, I'm one of those guys, for years, I've developed that shifting eye. And she looks down over us. But this day, it was just pouring out of her love. It was Valentine's Day. And we go through arithmetic, and we go through spelling. And now we go through geography. And now we have lunch. Do you really remember any of your lunches when you were a kid? You know, you had them. You ever thought of yourself as an eating machine? Your whole life is spent, you know, in and out, you know, just eat. You know, every time I look at people, in fact, I sometimes look at myself and I can see all the meals I've ever had since I was a little tiny baby. Can you imagine walking along this long, endless belt? Graham crackers and Yoo-hoo. There's 1,700 candy kisses. You keep walking, and slowly you can tell a man's life as it grows as you go up the scale. Pablum. Here's toast busted up. You remember when you used to have toast, buttered toast busted up in the milk with a little sugar on it, little cinnamon on the top of it when you were 6? You see that, you know, it comes up. Ooh, wow. I had an aunt who, whenever I went to visit her, she would give me soda crackers busted up into milk with a little sugar. No, wait a minute now. I'm going to tell you a funny thing about that. I will award you a brass figurine with bronze Oakley's palm if you can tell me what comic strip character made that dish popular. He kept talking about it all the time. No, not little Abner. Come on. He talked about Kickapoo Joy Juice. No. And as a little kid, see, I saw that comic strip, and I got so that I thought, gee, this is a, you got hung on it, you know. I thought, gee, that's a great dish because he always talked about it. And so Aunt Glenn would always give me busted up crackers with the salt, and I pretended I liked it because the guy in the comic strip liked it. And I figured Aunt Glenn didn't make it good. The busted up crackers. Well then, here's another one. Who always talked about corned beef and cabbage? Not Maggie. She hated it. Not Biddy Moore. Come on, that's where he went to get it. All right, Jake. Who ate hamburgers all of his life? Okay, what? All right, smart guy. Look at how aggressive they get, you know? You touch the belly button and they go. All right, okay. All right, what creature lived exclusively on orchids in the comic strip? Uh-huh. Now we're separating the sheep from the goats. Huh? No, Allie, you dragon. Come on. It was in the same strip that Wimpy was in. We will forget it. We will forget it. All right. Okay. All right, I'll ask you another. You want to hear another one of those? All right. Okay. Now, if you want to talk about food in comic strips, what character always, continually in the strip, was always going out for a plate of spaghetti? He always says, I'm going out for a plate of spaghetti. Why do I remember this stuff? Why is my mind crammed with this crud? I'll bet all of you down here remember Pearl Harbor. I don't remember nothing. You could tell me who fought at the Battle of Agincourt. All I would say would be, Popeye? All right, I'll ask you another one then. Okay, smart guy. What was it that Harold Keene and his buddy Binky, used to go down to Pop Jenks to get? Something to eat all the time. All right, I'll ask you another one. What did Harold Keene call his girlfriend? And it had to do with something to eat. Nope. No, you're just guessing. Why do I remember this? All right. Anybody out there, out in the listening audience, give us a call here at the Limelight, and we'll get the answers. But I'm a kid, see, and Miss Sheilds is about to have her Valentine party. And it was one of the very few times I ever ran into the true adult world. When I guess all of us at about the age of 10 begin to see the adult world. Hear that phone ring out there? Some poor slob out in Jersey. He too remembers this crud, you know. His mind is crammed with little things. You know, down at the office, he's perpetually working in the mail room. Well, all right. Miss Sheilds got up in front of the class, and this is just, it's tattooed in my mind. She says, all right now, children, I have a surprise for you. She says, I'm going to give all of you a Valentine. And Miss Sheilds gave each one of us one of those little pink baskets, you know, these paper baskets with the little pink hearts that taste like cinnamon. They're bitter. Have you ever liked those? They're terrible. And Miss Sheilds gave us each one, you know, and under it says, I love you, Miss Sheilds. Each one of us sitting there, what do you say, you know? When old lady Sheilds tells you she loves you. That's what we call her, old lady Sheilds. And so we're sitting there, each one of us is a little basket, and Miss Sheilds is up in front looking down at all of us. And she says, I just thought you ought to know that I love all of you. She's been saying this to kids for 100 years. And she really did, you know. She said, I just want to say I love all of you. Now, will all of you exchange past your Valentines up to the front of the class now? And we will exchange Valentines. And up they came. All these Valentines. You know, they come up. And she's standing there. You know, remember when you passed up to the kid ahead of you? He passes it to the kid ahead of him. See? Up it goes. And she says, all right, now, you, Alex, and how about you, Dolores? Both of you two now, you pass them out. So the two kids from the front, they pick up the Valentine. We're all sitting there. Oh, boy. Oh, gee, my Valentine's in there. You can see all the rest of the kids are all looking like this. Jack Robertson over here, he looks like a radiator cap ornament, you know, he's looking. And they start passing them out. Well, let me tell you what happened. Dawn Strickland had 36 Valentines. on her desk, stacked up like that. I got one little Valentine from a little short fat girl on the other side of the room named Helen Weathers. And she looked at me. I looked back over at Helen. Dawn just sits there. And not one of us knew who got Dawn's Valentine. Valentine didn't come from Dawn. Already at that age, Dawn was a taker. We'll be back in 5 minutes, gang. American culture in action. All right, here we are. We're back on the air now. All set now, gang. 1, 2, 3. I want to say right now tonight, hello, Boston. All right. I am surprised. Boston, I just want to apologize. Of course, you realize this is New York. This is the center of civilization here. Yeah, this is where love flows. Yes, this is Sodom and Gomorrah here. By the way, wouldn't it be terrible to have lived in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah? And you live 40 miles out of town, and you never even heard about it. That was just a place where you go on Saturday nights to buy shoes once in a while. Well, all right, here we are. We're back at the Limelight, and it's Abraham Lincoln's birthday. That was another big celebration that Miss Sheilds used to always have. And one of the things that she used to ask us to do after we would salute the flag, after we would give the Pledge of Allegiance, after we would all stand at attention next to our desk on his birthday, she would say, all together now, boys and girls, would all of you please, now stand up now, all together, sing Happy Birthday, Dear Abe. You see, Miss Sheilds was so old that Abe was kind of a contemporary, you know? So how about it? We are going to be the first people that I know of publicly here in this great year of 1966 to sing Happy Birthday, Dear Abe Lincoln. And if you want to join us out there in Teaneck, New Jersey, and in Boston, stand up next to your radio and belt it out. All right, here we go. Happy birthday, dear. Come on, hit it. Happy birthday, dear. Happy birthday, dear. Happy birthday to you. Good old Abe, happy birthday. You know, did you notice the way I led that singing there? How many of you spend any time in front of the lady glee club teacher? You know this bit? We had this tall lady named Miss Nelson who looked like a chicken. And she had this fantastic Adam's apple. And she was the kind of lady that wore big blue beads, you know, that hung way down. She was the artistic lady. You know, all schools have got one artistic lady who always felt she should have come to New York and gone to the American Academy of Art. Instead, she wound up at the Warren G. Harding grade school. And she wears big dirndls, you know, that kind of lady with all kinds of bangles and stuff. And she was always talking about her friends in Greenwich Village. Only she pronounced it Greenwich Village. And she used to stand up there in front of us, and I watched that Adam's apple go. And I always see that image of that fantastic chicken moving back and forth. And you know, it's funny, whenever I see Leonard Bernstein on television, I keep seeing this chicken, you know. Come on, boys, let's hear it back in the peckhorn section. That's it. You know, and he's directing some fantastic Beethoven thing. Well, Miss Nelson specialized in, can you bake a cherry pie, darling Philly? And I always sang bass, and all I used to do was go zum, 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 zum. Boy, it's terrible to grow up in a world of altos that got to sing the melody, sopranos that sang the melody, second tenors, and you go zum, 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 bum, bum. And then we used to sing this one, oh, the bells of St. Mary's. And all I would be doing was going bong, 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 bong. So these things scar you for life. Well, you know, speaking of Abraham Lincoln, one of my really traumatic experiences with Abe Lincoln in school goes back to an auditorium session. Oh, boy, I imagine half of you have, believe me, I bet half of you out there have a sense, whenever you go to a Broadway play, that Walter Kerr has said, a stimulating evening in the theater, you have a feeling of being in a very expensive auditorium session. And you're behind as asleep. You know, and you pretend like you're liking it, and you sit back there and you say, Walter Kerr said it was a stimulating evening in the theater. And you watch plays so dull, you can't even see them up there, you know. You can't focus. Your eyes keep going like this. You have a feeling that the whole thing is covered with a haze. And next to you is this loud lady eating candy kisses, you know. And you can hear her upper plate going clink, clink, clack. And you can smell the peanuts coming out of the kisses, you know, the popcorn. And next to you, this guy, have you ever sat in a theater in some fantastic theatrical evening and they're doing Hamlet? I saw Richard Burton do Hamlet. You know, this is supposed to be a fantastic evening. And Burton is running around there. He sort of looks like a little fat guy, you know. He really does when you see him in person. And Burton is saying, to be or not to be. He looks out at us. We look up. We say, yeah, that's right. To be or not to be, that is the question. And next to me was this little fat guy. You know, the kind that snores way down deep. You know, you could just hear the rumbling of the fires of hell. And he just kept going, oh. And you know the kind that begins to spread over into your seat? You move over a little bit, and you push the lady next to you, and she thinks you're trying to make the scene with her, you know? This tall, skinny spinster, and he goes, oh. And Burton, ever since it's funny, I can remember these fantastic scenes, and I can hear the obligato of snoring going through, and the cough. It's like you're living in a whole sea of coughing. And you can just hear it going on. Well, one day, we had this auditorium session, see. I am playing in the band. Now, I submit, and I've said this many times, that any people out there, any grown-up type, who have ever played in a high school orchestra or a high school band, at the age of 15 have already tasted the bitter cup of life. They already know that acrid scent of defeat. Boy, you don't know how defeating you can be, how fantastically under the weather you can be trying to play your string bass, and they're doing some tremendous thing from Wagner. Have you ever seen the bass parts for Wagner? Oh, gee, you're way behind and the orchestra's 4 pages ahead of you. You're still playing, and Dirks is going 3, 6, 9, 1, 2, 3, basses, and you're all, yeah. And there was this little fat girl used to play the string bass next to me, and she was one of these precise little girls that would count all the rest. And I'm standing there with my string bass, with my bow hanging there. And we're playing something like the entrance of the gods into Valhalla. Well, if you've ever heard the Hammond High School Band or the Hammond High School Orchestra playing the entrance of the gods into Valhalla, you know why the gods went. And we're all standing on this whole sweaty bunch of kids, and I got my string bass. You can smell the rosin. I feel this old bass leaning up against me, I hide down behind it. Big, fat thing, so boy, I feel it. I love that feel. And Dirks is up there. He's directing us, and it's going, he would sing it out. Of course, it didn't sound like what we were playing, because he would sing what was on the notes, And we had one musician in our orchestra. One musician, I'll never forget how rotten she made all the rest of us feel. No, seriously, it was this one girl who was an oboe player. And she was a state, national, international stellar champion. Oh, she was great. And she later went on to become a part of the Chicago Symphony and the whole thing, And she was a little weazened old lady at the age of 15. Oh, yeah, there's something about a girl that dedicates herself to the oboe. It's a very special girl, and she would sit there with that little thing. Now, you've all run across the oboe in crossword puzzles. Well, there is an old, well, it's a kind of almost dogma among classical musicians. All oboe players are nuts. Yep, they are. And she would sit there, and her eyes would be lighting with that strange fanaticism. And our poor little orchestra were singing, and Dirks is going, and you would see him glow. All of a sudden, we would come to the oboe section. That one little part where the oboe would play about 5 notes, and he would go, and she would go, oh, she would soar, she would soar over it. We'd all sing. Suddenly, for 1.5 measures, we were an orchestra. And then she would finish and she would settle back. So that was the way our orchestra was. And every day when we had an auditorium session, we would come in early. Now, all of you have been in high school, and when they say there'll be an auditorium session today in the second period, the first section will file out quietly while the second section comes in, and you will go to study hall when you're through with the auditorium session. Classes will begin as regular in the fourth period. Well, that was always a big moment for us, see, because we were going to perform. And we would go down about 15 minutes early. We'd get out our instruments. We'd stand down there in the pit. And Dirks would say, well, today, when they file in, let's try such a defeated man. He'd say, let's try Pomp and Circumstances. You think you're up to it today? Pomp and Circumstances. You should see a high school orchestra. It was like swimming underwater in a bowl of Ralston. So let's have Pomp and Circumstances. Now pass out the music, Doris, and Doris would pass the music from section to section. We would look down at it. And one day, the day was Abraham Lincoln's birthday. We're having a special Lincoln program. And they hand out things like national emblems. And they hand out things like, oh, the stars, oh, America, the gem of the ocean, Columbia, and all this stuff. They handed out all patriotic melodies. We stand down there. And Mr. Dirks, before the auditorium session, said, we have something special today. We are going to perform for a dramatic event. And you're going to have to watch your cues. When I give you the cue, be ready to play, because there will be a man on the stage, and he has given me this music. And as I give each cue, you play the music. Now we will go down right on the national emblem first. All right, check it. All right. Meeting on the old campground. All right, you got it out there. And so we're checking our music. What is this about, you know? Well, about 5 minutes before the auditorium session is to begin, I could see this curtain. You know, I'm right in the back. I'm a bass player, see? And the stage is directly behind me. I could smell the curtain. You know that musty, dusty smell of 18 trillion hours of auditorium sessions? Millions of classes have graduated from this stage. You could just smell all the dusty past. And you can smell where kids have been sick up there, and it's swept it up. You know. Yeah, you know the old faded purple curtain. And in the middle is our high school emblem, this great big H hanging. And you could see where it had come untacked, one part of it sort of hanging out like that. And we had one of these auditoriums that looked, well, it looked like a second-rate movie house of the neo-Moorish type. You know, heavily laced with late Rudolph Valentino. And it had all kinds of cherubs all around the side. It had little purple vases and stuff packed all around the edges. And we all, you know, the kids are filing in, and I'm standing back there. And Dirks is up by the podium watching us. And I can hear somebody pulling a chair behind me, behind the curtain. And I hear some talk. I can't quite make it out, but it's kind of blurred. I hear a little talk, and I hear one voice I recognize. Mr. Spone. Mr. Spone was our principal. Now, whenever I think of a principal, I think of Mr. Spone. Mr. Spone was Louis Stone squared. Oh, yeah, you know, some night, remind me to tell you of the night that I took part in and actually started. I'll tell you, I have to take credit for this. I started the first student demonstration in America. Inadvertently, no, it was the nuttiest thing. I'm standing out in front of high school one day, and our high school basketball team had won a sectional tournament, you know. And it's noon, and I'm standing out there. 28,000 kids were all standing out. This is Indiana, you know, where basketball is a religion. And our high school team had just won a sectional and was going on its way to the regional. And I'm standing down there with Schwartz and Flick. And the high school's up there. I got a couple of books and stuff. We're waiting to go in after lunch. And I said to Schwartz, boy, if that Spone wasn't such a fink, he'd let us off a half day. And Schwartz says, that's right, Spone's a fink. And Flick says, yeah, Spone's a fink. And about 20 yards away, somebody hollered, yeah, Spone's a fink. You have no idea how that spread. Within 5 minutes, there's 3,000 kids hollering, Spone's a fink! Spone's a big fink! At the school. I'm standing there. And suddenly the door slams open, and here stands Spone. He's this tall, gray-haired man. He's made out of granite. And the kids have been throwing lunch bags and stuff, you know. He slams open the door, and a couple of tomatoes fly. Tuna salad sandwich goes over his head, you know. He gets a Twinkie in the head. He brushes it off. Boy, and I'm scared to death, you know. And Spohn steps out on the steps and he just looks down. All the kids. He said, "Stop it. Now get in there." 3,000 kids walked in. And ever since that time, when I read about demonstrations, I remember how I started one and how easy it is. If any of you want to start a demonstration someday, you can. You know, as a matter of fact, I suspect if a crowd on the ground floor of the Empire State Building, standing down there waiting for an elevator, if one guy says, "Hey, let's start rocking this building," within 10 minutes, 18 people would be going back and forth. And within a half an hour, the building would be going like... Can't you see that building falling right over into Queens, you know? Well, all right, you know, I'm standing back there, and I'm in the orchestra, see, I'm waiting. I'm used to this thing, you know, it's kind of showbiz. The kids are coming in, and they're looking up at me, looking up at the orchestra, and we're struggling our way through pomp and circumstances. And then we're through. All the kids are out in front of us. There's 1,000 kids in the auditorium section. And you can smell the shirts and the corduroy knickers. How many of you remember the smell of a good pair of really fermenting corduroy knickers with twigs growing out of them, you know? It's like a kid is wearing he's wearing a pair of peat moss. You know? And, you know, the kids are all coming in. The girls are all sitting down there, and I'm looking down. And the curtain goes up. You hear it go up, and there sitting on the podium, all by himself, is Mr. Spohn. He looks down. He gets up. Today, children, we have a rare treat. Mr. Amos L. Watanabe, who is a famous actor, will give us his world-famous impression of Abraham Lincoln. What radio station is this, gang? WNAC-AM. And? WRKO-FM. Boston. That's the thing. And he sat down. Nothing. Dead silence. And then I hear somebody in the wing behind me whispering. Mr. Spohn looks. Nothing. In just a moment, Mr. Watanabe will be prepared to give us his world-famous program. So let us all give him a round of applause. And the kids all, you know how kids are, sitting like this, see. And then he came out. And to my dying day, this will always represent something about the theater, to me, that you never hear about. This tall man, he must have been 7 feet tall. He comes walking out, and he walks right past the back of my head. You could hear his shoes squeaking. I look up, and I look up, you know. Because you know what? You know, when you're in showbiz, you got to learn how to play it real big, see? And I just peering up there. And he stands right to my right. And I could see those 2 big shoes with dust all over them. And he starts to declaim. Had a tall hat, had a black beard, he had black sideburns, and he had this putty, huge nose, you could see the mole, and he had a black, shiny, broadcloth suit. It was Abraham Lincoln. He really looked like him. He did, you know, he came out, it was eerie. I'm looking up, I said, gee, that's Lincoln. And he started out. 87 years ago, our forefathers and Dirks is down there. 87 years ago, Our forefathers, and I... Watching him. He couldn't remember the Gettysburg Address. And Mr. Dirk started to play. He gives the cue. We go, and he starts to go. And this time he could hear the music, and it's rolling out of him. And he's giving this great Lincoln declamation. But as he does so, I observe something. I can't help but notice it. He is swaying as he talks. He's looking down at all these kids, and he's talking, and you could see the sweat pouring down off of his face, and the nose was coming off a little bit here in the side, and his deep voice was just ringing out, and he was giving excerpts from the Lincoln-Douglas debates, and I would like to propose the following question to Mr. Douglas, this great protector he's going, and Dirks would give us the cue and we'd play. And then I smelled a familiar smell. It was the same smell that I always smelled around my Aunt Louise. She was the aunt who used to give me these big wet kisses. I had an Aunt Louise who painted her mouth on real big, see? She actually had a little mouth. She would paint on her mouth, and it was the kind, now kiss Auntie Louise, and she would blah, 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 all over, and I'd be dripping, And I always used to say to myself, Aunt Louise tastes funny. I was still in my Ovaltine stage, and I wasn't used to rye yet, Well, I could smell that smell, and Mr. Dirk is sitting over by the edge of the podium. I could see him looking. And the actor kept talking. He kept going on. And then the curtain came down, and he was through. And the audience applauded, and they left. And then the second auditorium session came in. It was about a 10 or 15-minute period between two sessions. Mr. Spohn is sitting on the podium again. The curtain goes up. He gives the speech. He gives the cue, and out comes the actor. This time he's really swaying. 7 years ago, and you could hear the audience was starting to laugh. And you know what happened? It was a funny thing. When in the first auditorium session, I am saying to myself, this guy's a bum, he's drunk. But in the second auditorium session, I'm pulling for him. Because they're starting to laugh out there. And he says, 4 score. And suddenly Mr. Spohn got up and said, we thought all of you children would enjoy seeing Mr. Watanabe dressed as the great emancipator, and let's thank him all for making an appearance. He was halfway through his act, and he stopped. He sort of bowed, and his hat is hanging on sideways. And the crowd applauds and goes. And the curtain came down. And I could hear Mr. Spohn behind the curtain saying, he says, you will never work a high school auditorium session again. I heard that voice start, wow. And I took my bass fiddle, and I went up through that auditorium by myself, with the guys with the peck horns, and I kept saying to myself, he's an actor. It was the first live actor I'd ever seen. And now every time I go to a Broadway house, and I see those people that play the little roles, the guy that comes in the second act, and he's the doctor. When they say, is there a doctor? And he comes in and he listens with a stethoscope, says, that man is dead. I keep thinking of that Abraham Lincoln, that drunken, second-rate, has-been actor who never made it. And wherever he is tonight, I want to say this. That was the greatest Lincoln I ever saw. Because I have a suspicion that Abe himself would have liked it. If I know Abe Lincoln, he liked his bourbon too. And so let's give that actor a hand wherever he is. Yes, hail and farewell. Farewell, sweet prince. You know, I'll never forget, speaking of that myth of a great place to visit, I went home on a vacation during the Christmas holiday, and I get off the train, the train that comes in from Chicago, and it unloads me in Hammond, Indiana. Now, I don't know whether you've ever seen Hammond, Indiana in the midst of a winter thaw. Oh, I'll tell you, have you ever seen a really dirty dish rag? You know, the kind with little pieces of coffee grounds on it. A dish rag that's kind of fermented. Well, that's the way Hammond looked. Oh, yeah, I had to admit it, and I get out, I get in this cab, see, and it's an old battered Checker. And I get in it at the station, and we start driving along these streets. And I'm all dressed up, I'm wearing my New York suit, and I've got an attaché case, I'm coming home to see my family, I'm going to see my brother, the whole thing, I'm sitting back there. And I can see this guy looking at me through the rear view mirror, and he's one of these real redneck types. And he's wearing the standard Midwestern work uniform, which is a Sears Roebuck lumberjack. It's red and black, that lumberjack. He's got a corduroy hat with a couple of earmuffs sticking up on the top. He's a real Midwestern klutz, and he's driving along. And I could see him eyeing me, see, and I'm back there, I'm looking around, I'm looking at the old familiar terrain. I'm looking, we're driving through these dirty streets, and you can see the cruddy snow. You can't stand there, you gotta move. That's the girls, fella. Sit down, you got a seat, go find it. And so he's driving along, and here's what happened. This is all connected with the New York myth. He's looking in the mirror, and he's looking back at me. He knows that I just came in on a train, see? And it's bubbling up, you can get that little look in the eye, the guy's going to say something, and finally he says it, he says, "You're from out of town?" I said, "Well, I'm from this town. What do you say?" So I says, "Well, yeah, I guess so, yeah." It's, "Where are you from?" I says, "New York." He says, "Oh, New York." He has this real Indiana talk, And when an Indianan talks, he always says things like, "Well, it's time to do the dishes." That's Indiana talk. He says, "I like nothing better than a good fish dinner. And down around Frankfort, Indiana, they have plenty of cows." And so he says, "Where are you from?" You say, "You're from New York?" I said, "Yep, that's right." He says, "New York." He said, "Boy," he says, I went to New York here last year. I saw the fair. He said, "Me and my wife, Emma, we went to see the fair there." He says, "I don't know how you guys can stand living in New York." And I'm looking out of the window seat. And on one side, out on the right, there is a junkyard that stretches to the horizon. And it's fermenting, And you can see little pillars of smoke coming out of it where the dumps are burning. And on my left, I see an endless string of big gas tanks. And you can smell the oil and the fermenting cabbage, and you can see used car lots. He says, "Yep," he says, "New York's a great place to visit, but I sure as hell couldn't live there." I'm looking out. He said, "I guess a guy don't get used to anything in time." And I says, "Yeah, that's right." He says, "Yep," he says, "Gee, I can't stand that life out there." Well, that's all part of that myth, that we all live in. People who live in Indiana think Indiana's the center of the universe. People in Teaneck. They think that New York is a suburb. Oh, yeah, it's Teaneck, that they surround. Well, one time, speaking of somebody here asked for a story. And what was the story you asked for back there? Oh, yeah, it's connected with that awful Valentine Day thing. Oh, boy. I really shouldn't tell you this story. Are there any ex-newsboys in the crowd? No, honey, you didn't deliver papers. This lady sitting here with a mink stole around her neck. Well, I want to tell you, though, any guy who ever delivered newspapers, he really tasted it. And I used to deliver papers, you see, in the Midwest. All right, at ease now. The show's up here. She's all right. She'll be okay. The show's right up here. Every morning, I delivered a morning paper. Used to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Oh, boy, I remember that awful feeling. I'm laying in the sack and it's cold out. We had a house, that was so cold, our house didn't keep the air out. It just strained it. And you could just hear the wind blowing in under the doors and over the transoms, and, the house would wave and creak. It was a rented house. All of our life, we lived in Mr. Ramey's rented house. And the basement, we had a basement that even in the summer was 10 below zero. And so in the middle of winter, the floor would be like ice skating on it. You could feel it. And I can remember lying in the sack. Oh, that great feeling. I think we don't really celebrate enough some of the good feelings that we all share in common as human beings. These little feelings of true ecstasy. Lying in the bed there, and you're all covered up, and it's cold, and you got at least another hour to sleep. Isn't that a great feeling, you lay there? Oh, you look around. That real snotty feeling, boy, have I got it made, And you feel the cold air hitting your face. And there's this little slight nagging thing, some little thing down around the edge of your consciousness that keeps biting you. And it says, yeah, but you're going to get up, man. It's getting later. And you say, oh, and I always have a watch. Even as a kid, I used to have this Mickey Mouse watch. And he had 2 radium gloves that would point at the time, see? And I look at my watch. It's 3:30, and I know I got at least a half an hour. See, I'm laying there, and it's cold. And then that moment of terrible feeling when your mother shakes you. Time to get up. Come on, let's go. Oh, gee whiz, and you get up, and it's cold, and I'm putting on my pants, and I'm standing in front of the stove. She'd open up the stove, to heat the house. We had an oven, see, and I'm standing in front of the oven, and I'm heating my behind, and I've got these stiff pants that would creak, and I put them on. You get so cold that you walk in a stiff way so that you don't touch your clothes. You walk around like this, It's 4 o'clock in the morning, and I've got to go out, friend, and deliver the Chicago Tribune. Now, do you know anything about the Tribune? That is the world's angriest newspaper. This is a newspaper that states flatly above its heading, it says the Chicago Tribune, and it's got birds and eagles, and it's got pennants hanging from it, and it's printed in 4 colors, red, white, and blue, and green, and above it is a big flag, big red, white, and blue flag, and printed on it says, the world's greatest newspaper. How about that for guts? So you see the Chicago Tribune staring over 1,000 miles of tundra, looking towards the New York Times. And the New York Times is standing there in New York looking out to sea. And the Times merely says all the news that fit the print. How about that for arrogance? Isn't that a great selection of a word, fit to print? There's just a lot of news they don't even notice, you know? It's not fit to print. And the Tribune is standing there saying the world's greatest newspaper. And it's holding its flag and it's staring off towards the New York Times. And every morning I would sit outside of George's candy shop where I picked up my papers. And there'd be 17 other newsboys all sitting there folding them up. You know, you get that real snotty feeling of total competence when you really learn how to fold the newspaper, you know, into the sack, you know, pick it up and you start I can still do it, you know. You ought to see me fold a Sunday Times. You're looking at the only guy who's ever done it. And I did it in the Christmas issue. Yeah? Am I being challenged? It came out looking like a paper football. You know? And I'm every morning, you know, I'd sit there and I would frantically do this, you know, wrapping these things up. I had 67 papers to deliver. And this great big fat bag, and I'd get up, ooh, and the wind is blowing down out of the lake. My Elgin bicycle's over here. I try to get up, ooh. Hey, Schwartz, will you shove from behind? And then, ooh. I am carrying the Chicago Tribune editorial. Boy, it was heavy and turgid and made out of cement, you know. I get up and I get my foot over the bike. Okay. I'll see you guys later, and off I go. I'd pump about 17 blocks and I'd hit my route. In Indiana, it's called a route. I'd get to my route, and there's the first house, you know, and you know it absolutely, even to this day, I know my route. I know it in my mind, every house. Every porch, every door. And I would pump, see. Out would come the paper, one arm, you know, steering this thing. Crash! I'd hear bang! The boom. And you know, these incidentally, for all of you guys who are ex-newsboys, you know this feeling of real ecstasy. I used to work carom shots. You know the kind where you go, there was one place where they had this long flight of stairs up to the second floor. And at the second floor, right to the right was the door. Just a little, you know, like a little closet up there. And I used to come scooting along real low, and I could look up the stairs, see, never missing a beat on the bike. I did this underhanded swish. And as I'd go past the house, I would hear it go thunk, 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 thunk. And right next to the door always was this garbage pail. That was the goal, see? It would go thunk, 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 ka-thunk. And I'd say, Shepherd cans another 2-pointer. You know? Oh, yeah, guys are always playing little games in their mind. They're scoring baskets, you know. Yes, there's Shepherd. There goes Shepherd. Yeah, boom. Shepherd throws that long shot from left field up to the upper deck, into the eaves, you know, into the gutters, driving along. Every morning, see, I would go over my route. I remember one morning, oh, boy, you're talking to a guy who early in life learned to be a dog hater. Oh, I'll tell you why, because dogs hate me. I mean, after all, you love if love is reciprocated. I went over my route 3 mornings in a row with an Airedale attached to my calf. He used to come turn up. Ow! You know, I just keep going. He's hanging down below there. He'd get tangled in the chain once in a while, you know. You know, he and I were old friends every morning, you know. I'd get out of here and a bang in the eye. And I'd see him fall off after about 6 or 7 blocks. These 2 red eyes. I'll get you tomorrow. I'd say, "Ah, the pig's here, you slob." I'm a real dog fighter. However, the big moment, though, for me always was Saturday morning. Collection morning. Oh, boy, how many of you remember that awful, rotten feeling of collecting? Oh, you know, and old George would sit back there like Buddha. He was the guy that distributed the papers, see, and every day he would keep a notation on how many we took out. And then at the end of the week, he'd say, "Shepherd, you owe me $1.76. And I would go around with my little sack. I had a little bag, a little marble bag I'd carry my money in, and I'd knock on the door. Every morning, every Saturday morning, I hated it. And I'd say, "Newsboy," and you'd hear this voice, "Next week." He'd been saying that for 6 months. Then I'd knock on the door again, "Newsboy." Then there'd be a long pause, and I'd hear somebody crawling under the bed. I'd say, "I know you're in there." Well, every last Saturday, there would be this one lady would come to the door, and I'd knock. I'd say, "Newsboy," and she'd say, "Yes." Say, "Newsboy." She'd say, "Oh, yes, just a moment, I will see." And I'd hear scurrying back and forth. And then the door would open. There she'd be. She'd give me her little 17 cents. "Would you like to come in for a little cup of hot cocoa?" I'd say, No, I'm in a hurry." I'd go. Well, this went on for about 6 months. Until that unbelievable morning. This is one of those great traumatic moments. I knock on the door. I hear her scurrying. I say, "Newsboy." I walk around on the porch. She says, "Yes." I say, "Newsboy." "Yes." The door opens. And she says, "Come in." Nobody in the doorway. I said, "Oh, okay." And so I walk into the living room. I'm standing, it was one of these overstuffed living rooms, you know, kind of dark, and you could smell canned beans and stuff. I'm standing in the living room, and suddenly she comes out of the bedroom, jaybird naked. Oh, she just comes out, she says, "Oh, I didn't know you were there." How do you handle that, you know? "Oh, she's just a minute, I'll get something on." She comes out, she's got a bathrobe. She says, "Here's your 17 cents. Will you count it?" And I count it. What radio station is this, gang?
WNAC AM
And?
WRKO FM Boston.
I get outside of the house. Oh, boy. And I felt rotten, like I'd done something real terrible. See, real rotten. So I get back on the bike and I pedal along. I deliver the rest of my papers. Well, I want to tell you, that night, at supper time, I somehow felt that, I can't describe, you know, all of you know guilt, don't you? Well, I don't know whether girls know guilt the same way men know guilt. But I kept feeling funny, you know. You know, my idea of a girl at that time was a little short, fat person with with patent leather shoes. You know, I had no idea. Boy, sitting there sweating. But then I discovered I kind of liked it, see? Gee, you know, it's kind of... So all through the week, I'm delivering the papers. Every time I see her house, boom, you know. It had hit the side of that door, bang, slap, you know. I say, she heard me that time, see? Come Saturday, and I go through my route, you know, and before I went out on my collection route, I had combed my hair, I put on my new polo shirt, I had on my new knickers, I've gone the whole thing, you know, and I go each house, and now I come up to her house. Boy, I've been reading in the week, you know, to prepare. I've been reading Spicy Detective. You know, I know what to do now, boy. I knock on the door, and I hear this scurrying, see, upstairs. Newsboy, it's me. You know, me. More scurrying. I think she's getting ready. Boy, this is going to be great. Holy smokes. Newsboy! And the door slams open, and there is this big guy. He's got this beard, you know, big black jaw. He said, what do you want? I'm here to collect. He says, Madge, you got some money? There's a little kid out here. Oh, she says, oh, is the little newsboy there? A newsboy. He gives me my 17 cents. And I get back out on my bike. And I pedal down through the darkness. And you know the funny thing about it? Every day after that, when I would go past that house, I would see in my mind this guy with this black jaw and this lady in that green kimono. And you know, even today at this point, when I look down, I see other guys who've gone through it. Like the time I'm working in the bowling alley. Any of you ever set pins? Oh, boy. Boy, oh, boy. I remember the time I'm setting pins, see. These are all kid jobs that we all lived through, and we learn how to live through them. And incidentally, ever since they brought in the automatic pin setter, bowling has not been the same. You remember the pin boy? Well, I'm sitting back there, this pit, you know. Here's what a pin boy did. He sat in the pit. He'd look up that alley, see, and he'd see that bowler. The bowler would look down at him. The pin boy would look at the bowler. And it was these two guys. And in between them were these little pins. Then I would get up on the back, you know, on the backstop, and I'd see that ball coming down. Smack, right in the 1-3 pocket. Back I'd go. The pins are flying all around, off the shins, off the gut, off the side of the head. All right. Pick them up. And then he would holler, you know, they always holler, set them up on 7. Okay. I dump them in. Down it go to rack. You slob. Cut out lost on the ball, you slob. Then he'd look down. He'd say, all right, I'm set them pins and shut up. And he'd lay them down. Well, I remember one morning, the pin boys are all sitting around, and the tin mill is bowling. If you've ever seen steel workers bowl, you know exactly what they go through at places like the Anzio Beachhead. Oh, we used to hate that. There would be, you know, every night there'd be open bowling, and nice little ladies would come, and they'd lay the ball down and push it. Oh, I remember that snotty feeling, you know, when a guy is teaching a girl to bowl, and I'm back there, And he says, all right, I can hear him. You know, you can hear that voice coming up over the alley. And he'd be saying, all right, now, honey, here's the way you do it, see? You hold the ball like this, lay it down easy, and right into the slot. See, just move it like that. Now, I'll show you how to do it. He'd look down, see, and I'm standing up there and say, yeah, you sure will, Dad. You don't know what a pin boy can do to your game. And he lays it down there, you know, he gets 2 pins. I have set him crooked, see. And he says, well, I hear him say, well, now that's the way you do it, but, you know, you put it right in the pocket there. Now, let you try it. And this little skinny chick would get up there, and she holds the ball, you know, like this. It's heavy. He said, no, you hold it like that, and I swing it, and she'd lay it down and go, ooh. And I'd see that ball, you know, going thunk, dunk, dunk. And I'd watch it coming into them pins, see? I'm standing there like that. Dunk, dunk, dunk. It's going to pick up the 7 and nothing else, see? Dunk, dunk, dunk. And just as it hits, I hit my little loose board. Boom! And she'd say, is that the way? The guy'd say, well, yes. Now here, I'll show you. That was okay, but you got to put it in the 1-3 pocket. And I'm setting them up, see? And we had special pins for guys like that. They had the frayed bottoms. They never turned over. I'd set them up, you know, down it would go. Well, I remember one day, the tin mill is in. First time I ever saw a guy fight back. In the next alley is Schwartz. And Schwartz is sitting down there. I'm over here. And we're looking at this lineup of guys from the tin mill. They're tin mill reckoners. Every one of them weighed 240 pounds. Big guts. These guys didn't bowl a ball. They'd run it, you know. They'd throw that thing down at you. They'd spit and walk back and forth and drink their beer. And Schwartz is hanging in down there. And every 30 seconds, that ball would go boom, boom, pow, bump. Schwartz says, all right. Now, are you aware that the pin boys had in their little pits back, they each carried a little pocketful of talcum powder. He'd drop it in the thumb hole. And the ball would go up in the air and down. And after 3 shots like this, the guy said, what are you doing to the ball? Schwartz says, what are you doing to the ball, you slop? He says, I'll show you, kid. Pow, and the ball comes down. Schwartz took the ball. The first time I've ever seen a ball go the other way.